I hit record. I'm hitting live right now. And I'm going to let everybody know that we're going live on the website. And then I'm going to premiere this on YouTube after. And Ellen, I got to say, thank you so much for emailing me. It's so powerful when we start to talk about what we were off air about these entities that can influence people's minds, like these parasitic entities. And people wouldn't even know it. And then they go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, you're schizophrenic, and then it just can escalate from there. So Ellen, thank you for being a guest on the project. How the heck are you?
Hey, good to see you, Rex. It's always good to see you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. Like when you had your conversation with Billy Carson and, all the other, I'm familiar with all those people, and I could have added more to the conversation. I'm like, I need to be in on this little coffee clutch, basically, because there's a lot to know. And,
maybe we can do a roundtable next time.
Yeah, you know what? I would love to, just because there's always something more to add. And that's what I like about the people coming together, bringing each piece of information that they know to the table and to add to the pie, because we are each just pie pieces. And there is a bigger story that's happening here on Earth. And, the more we can discuss this, the better off I think we're going to be. So I became a QHHT practitioner for Dolores Cannon's work back in 2018. Now, I did go, in college, I studied psychology and art, but I followed my art, which became my passion. And afterwards, I had done a journey where I was selling my art in Atlanta, and then I moved to Florida and I got into photo finishing, but I moved back to Georgia after 8 years of being in Florida, and I actually started working on the movies. And I was there for 11 years. But while I was working in the studios in Atlanta, I decided to just listen to all of the most amazing tales, things that people were bringing, intelligent people that had something to say on YouTube. And that was my kind of education into this whole realm. But I've always been curious about the strange things in the world. And in 2018, after I took Dolores Cannon's class, I was like, just experimenting. Like you have to practice on a few different people. Like I think the thing, they had like 25 that you had to do for free, and then you could start charging. But what I started realizing was these people had a lot more going on based on their past history. Now, the thing that gets me is I think there's something to do with the auric field of people once they've experienced traumas or addictions or abuse that allows these entities to connect to the lower chakras. And I have started removing entities from people's bodies. And when they are done with their session, their hypnosis session, they tell me, they're like, I physically felt something shift and leave, which is interesting. But, we need to start getting this out. And as many people as possible who would start even listening to the possibility that there's entities that we can't see, because I know it seems like a crazy tale, but I've met too many people now who have told me things. I even have a cousin who was addicted to meth and was in prison for 10 years, and he was in and out of prison and all this trouble. And I told him recently, I said, look, you're probably listening to something that's luring you down the wrong path, because they can absolutely affect your energy fields with your lower chakras. It seems to be attaching to the third chakra, mostly, like from the root to the yellow to the orange, like around in the orange region. And I don't, I'm only getting into all this stuff with the chakras and, balancing all of that and trying to figure out what is going on and how is this happening.
Well, how did you get into start to even think about this kind of stuff? Like, what was it that made you research Dolores Cannon and start to get into the what is it called, QHHT
Yes, it's quantum healing hypnosis technique. That's
Okay.
Dolores Cannon's method. And really, when you're talking about hypnosis, you're usually talking about a script that you go by to help someone get into the hypnosis state, which is basically, you know, people get they're sort of like mystified by this term hypnosis. It's a guided meditation. Let's just call it for what it is. You know, I want to demystify everything, but I was listening to many different YouTube videos, you know, like I said, like I've traversed so many different topics. We could talk about literally anything, but I was listening to Dolores in about 2016 and I was like, what is this? You know, she's talking to people and getting them into past lives and then talking to their higher self and healing them through their subconscious mind. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to take the class. And I decided to take the class and I was blown away. The very first session, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it was just like, are you kidding me? So I practiced on my friends, and one of my first friends was my roommate at the time. And she was telling me, you know, under hypnosis, she's saying that she was in the water, like she was a mer person. And she was in this meeting where they had telepathic communications and they were all discussing how there was a great war and they needed to go and help. Well, the strange thing about this whole session was she remembers in this life being born. And I'm like, how many people remember actually being born in this lifetime? Like physically, you know, the whole thing. Well, she went through that whole process in hypnosis. And it was like, are you kidding me? I could write a Hollywood script from this. So she proceeded to just go into her life as a child in this lifetime. And then, I mean, it was like seamless the way it was. But when she was in the water as a mer person, she had a friend that had purple hair. Now, this is where you can't make this stuff up. And she talked about how her hair looked like purple flowers. And I was like, well, that's fascinating. You know, I mean, you just go with it. You don't discredit anything. 3 months later, I get an email from someone that had found me on Dolores's website and she wanted a session. Well, she comes and she starts telling me that she's a mer person, you know, in this land. It starts with a P. She couldn't remember the name, but she said it starts with a P. And she had purple hair that looked like flowers. I was like, you guys need to meet each other, you know? So I actually got them to meet each other and they didn't know each other. But my friend also, I had asked her where she was and she said she was in a land called Potolo. And I'm like, okay, you can't, again, the P.
That starts with a P too.
Yes. So, you know, it just left me stunned and amazed. But when you think about quantum physics and what it's discovering right now with our reality and the DNA that actually holds this holographic quantum consciousness, is basically all the memories that are in our cells. And Dr. Masaru Emoto has proven about the consciousness of water and how it will retain our consciousness, you know? So it starts to make sense, you know, this whole Dolores Cannon accessing the suppressed or stored memories in the cells. And we can activate those. We can actually, when we talk to ourselves, we can activate them with our voice. This is another thing that I'm discovering because our voice is a frequency. And certain tones, as you know, with, you know, reading the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and all of that, certain tones carry a certain vibratory sound that resonates inside your body. And you can feel the frequencies that just go throughout. So it makes sense, really, when you start talking about all these different aspects of what science and spirituality are doing, you know, what they're explaining about different things. And I believe science and spirituality belong in one unit, and that somehow everything got distorted and disconnected in our past history.
Astrology and astronomy got separated. They used to be connected. And, I'm not talking about the stuff you read in the newspaper, but true astrology, where they take the zodiac signs and the charts, they get into major details. I have a friend that's been doing it for 50 years. And I mean, it's amazing, the art and the skill and just the experience that it takes to be an awesome astrologer. But then you've got people that have that mental connection where they may not have the same experience, but they've just got that intuition, which is awesome. I see that a lot as well. And I wanted to ask you, you're talking about so much cool stuff, and I agree with you about the Emoto's work is amazing. People can look that up if they haven't heard of Emoto. I'm sure most people that watch Leak Project have, where you'll take samples of water and you'll put a piece of tape that says a specific word on the water, and it changes the water. Literally, it's amazing. So just writing a word down and putting it, it's incredible. And I wonder, as our bodies are human antennas, and it seems like we're going into a different consciousness, a different state of consciousness overall as a group, at least in the circles that I'm hanging out with, the people that I'm talking to, we're kind of at this level of almost reading each other's minds sometimes, right? Yes. And stuff is happening. It's really cool. And so, but I wanted to talk to you about, like, you have been, you've worked for many TV series and film productions. Two that are, like top echelon are Walking Dead and Stranger Things. I'm a much bigger fan of Stranger Things because I love the 80s. And zombie movies are great. Yeah, right.
Filmed in my town.
Yeah, that Stranger Things was. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Jackson, Georgia. Yes.
Georgia's kind of like the new epicenter, or one of the new epicenters for entertainment, and I think that's cool that it's kind of stepped out of the Lost Angels, the area of Lost Angels. I mean, Los Angeles. But so how did you get into the industry? Like, what got you?
After living in Florida for 8 years, again, because I was actually born in Pensacola, but I was raised in Georgia, and I moved back to Florida because this is crazy. So I had a free place to stay on Palm Beach, like a free house to live in. I was basically, when I was married, I was helping just take care of somebody's house. It was a snowbird's house. And we did that for about 8 months. And so I was hanging out, and I tried to do the art thing down in Florida, but it wasn't working. So I got into faux finishing. And I mean, I did like multi-million-dollar homes on Jupiter Island, Marco Island, Palm Beach, everywhere. And Alan Jackson's house was one of the ones that I did in Jupiter Island, which was crazy. But so I moved back to Georgia, and that was in 2009. So I needed to find some way to establish myself again and make income and all that. So, and I had a friend who worked in the movies. He had been doing it for 15 years. He was a props master. And so I just kind of contacted him, was asking some questions. And, he's like, sure, you can sign up. I'll help you get in, because it was the Film Mechanics Union. It's the IATSE 479 here in Georgia. And you work behind the scenes, working on the sets. So my first gig, I actually worked at Tyler Perry Studios for one day, this is 2009. And after that, I was like, hey, what do you got to do to get in, keep going here? It took me a while, but I eventually got on Vampire Diaries, and I was what they call a day player, which is a part-time, as they need you, but I was pretty much busy every week. And I got into the paint department and set dressing. And then I did about 3 seasons on Vampire Diaries, and then just kept going from there. Once I got in on a crew, they didn't let me go. They just took me because I'm an artist, so I could do all these crazy things.
I love the work behind you.
Oh yeah, thanks. That's so I got my zombie over here. I actually got this zombie on. I bought him from a friend of mine who said he could make life-size Frankensteins, and I said no, I want a zombie butler. So this is he's life-sized, and I bought him on when I was working on Three Stooges. So I hadn't even been on Walking Dead yet, but it's kind of funny. But yeah, I do a lot of horses and just whatever I feel like painting, and I sell it.
Yeah, I need to get an original piece from you, and I'll showcase it behind me. So I'll go to your website and see what you have available. Maybe I'll commission you for a specific piece, because yeah, that's great work. And I'm a collector. I've got a lot of art. I love great art.
I've watched your collection grow behind you and every video.
Yeah. We're getting a new studio in a few months. So
awesome.
when that happens, I'll be able to showcase a bunch more art. But yeah, that's so cool. So what do you do for Walking Dead, or what did you do for Walking Dead?
So for Walking Dead, I was painting the props. I was the person who was on set dirtying the cars. The zombies, you get a zombie horde to touch the dirt on the cars, it has to be reset. It's that kind of stuff. And it's so funny, you watch it behind the scenes, and it's just, it's hysterical, because you have zombies wearing sunglasses and smoking cigarettes and going to lunch and doing all this stuff. And you're just like, this is surreal. But yeah, so I was basically in the paint department. So I wasn't a producer or anything like that, but it was fun to see everything from a different perspective, on the inside.
Nice. Now what about Stranger Things?
Now, Stranger Things, I actually was on set. So I've done a lot of set work. So I've done pre-production and on set. And so with being on set, you go around to all the film locations, and you're there for the camera. Whenever the camera people need you, or, set dressing or props, if they need something touched up or painted or whatever, that's what I was there for. So I basically got paid to hang out most of the time, because you're waiting. You can't do anything until somebody gives you something. So I'm like, hey, you got something to do? Yeah. And in Stranger Things, like, there was a scene where they had, and I forget the characters' names, it was the guy with the muscle car and then the girl, because I was only there filling in for my friend. She had gone on a cruise, but they film in my town. So I go and I talk to them. I know the crew people. I'm like, hey, yo. But yeah, I had to go and like knock down the shiny stuff on the car. So you have to think about this. So this is technical. This gets really technical. It has to be removable. And for the things that are permanent, like the things that they own, you can use things that are permanent paint or, wax. We use different kinds of wax, or like hairspray or deodorant spray, or they have this series of paints. It's called movie paint, and that's supposed to be removable, but a lot of times it's not, depending on the surface that it's on. Yeah, I mean, there's so many crazy stories of some of the stuff that I had to do. The most vile thing I think I had to do on Walking Dead, I had to carve into the linoleum floor. Now, granted, it was an abandoned hospital, but I had to carve with a 5-in-1, basically FU in the linoleum. And I was like, I'm like, this can't be removed. They're like, do it. I'm like, and you got to just do it. When the director says do it, you just do it. And you're like, okay. So it was the episode where they put the scissors on the linoleum tile and covered up the F, the U. This is ridiculous.
I think that they could get just as many views doing the behind the scenes with Walking Dead, like you said, sunglasses, instead of eating brains, they're like eating the snacks that were brought to them from the producers, Oh, get the organic donuts over here, please.
Yeah, like I've got like some photos too. I was prepared in case you asked me for photos, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous, some of the stuff. Like the Halloween. So they celebrated Halloween every year, and you could dress up and come to set and go to work, basically. Well, the first year in 2014, I dressed up as Afrotar. And little did I know that Gail Ann Hurd used to be married to James Cameron, and she was the executive producer for The Walking Dead. So when she saw me wearing this Afrotar, like I was painted blue with the biggest fro you've ever seen in your life, she took a photo and sent it to James. She's like, I got to take a photo and send it to James. He's just going to love it. I was like, you can't make this stuff up either.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd definitely like to see some photos. And I'd also like to talk about the Saturn mysteries,
yeah.
like the ring makers of Saturn. So I've got the book, Ring Makers of
Oh,
Saturn.
you did? Okay, yeah, that's I don't have the book, but I saw, so I found Norman Berggren on YouTube discussing the ring makers of Saturn. And I was like, what? What do you mean there's ships? Oh, I've got a weird tale with this though. So I knew about the ring makers of Saturn and how there's these huge ships that are making the rings. And then the North Pole is the hexagon, and that is where they get the cube from that they worship, of Saturn. And a cymatics person said that that's a sound wave, because the clouds cut corners around to make the hexagon. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Go look at the North Pole of Saturn. Oh my. So it's a hexagon. The clouds go in corners and it's swirling. So you're like, what on earth? Clouds do not naturally form corners. So the guy said that it's a sound wave. And of course, I'm sure you know about Iapetus being the Death Star.
Looks just like the Death Star.
Yeah.
The first podcast I ever did, which was like 12 years ago, I did a podcast. Well, no, 11 years ago. And it was on Iapetus and the moon, and talking about the possibility of the moon being artificial. Iapetus looking like the Death Star. Totally looks like the Death Star. It's weird.
Well, that's because we're dealing with the cultists. Pretty much all of these Hollywood producers and whoever the writers are too, they are occultists. They know hidden things. And the game developers. I'm telling you, I got weird stuff about that too. So let's start with this whole Saturn thing, because this gets kind of weird in a strange. I mean, for me, it's good because it kind of clicked some things into place of what we're dealing with out here in the world. So I'm starting to get an idea that these things that we call planets are actually like biospheres where there is life that is contained, because looking at the Norse mythology map of our world, you'll see that there's different spheres at the bottom. And the strange thing about that, and I'm sorry to I'm segueing off of Saturn for a moment, just because I want to kind of give a foundation of what we might be dealing with.
No, this is great.
There are different spheres. And one of the spheres, lo and behold, is Niflheim. Niflheim. I'm like, that sounds like Nephilim. But Niflheim in the Norse mythology map is a realm of spirits. And I'm like, okay, it's starting to kind of make sense, because we think Nephilim might be giants, but what if they aren't? What if it's spirits? Let me just go back to Saturn, and then we'll come back to this whole train of thought, because this goes into the Emerald Tablets when we start talking about what the rituals are, the spilling of vital fluids from humans, and citing rites, doing these rituals, summoning things from dark spaces. Saturn. So back in 2020, since I've become a practitioner of QHHT, I've had to practice on people, and they've practiced on me. And I've been delving into this whole hypnosis thing. And now I get how Edgar Cayce was downloading his information so quickly. Once you have done this several times, if you go into hypnosis sessions and you start to get the whole process of how to do it, you can start doing it on your own. Like just channeling. What they call channeling is basically your own meditation where you're downloading information. In 2020, I was just like, what is it? Why do these people worship Saturn? What is it about Saturn? I know it's got these weird rings and the ship supposedly creating the rings, this weird hexagon thing. Why? Why are they sacrificing people and doing all this stuff to bring forward these entities? My higher mind told me, because they want that control here. They want that control system here, because Saturn is controlled by artificial intelligence. I have been trying to find anyone else on this existence that is talking about this connection, because in a hypnosis session with one of my clients, I got them to remote view Saturn. And during their remote view, and I didn't disclose any of the stuff that I had downloaded, But during their remote view, they said, I'm sensing a hive mind with a shielding that does not allow me to see the surface. And I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm not making this stuff up, this is just, it's blowing me away, because I'm like, that makes so much sense. What if we're dealing, now this is just out there as a theory right now, because I don't have any connecting evidence for this. What if we are dealing with time traveling or people from another sphere, biological sphere, that have come into our reality to subvert it to their authority and use? Because where did all this technology come from all of a sudden? And, now that they're trying to do things and connect people to the Borg, I just have to question, like, this is getting weird out here in the world.
It is. And I think that it's just, it's this transition into the digital age. It's a transition of physical to digital. And then maybe a couple thousand years down the road, it's going to go from digital to physical again. But I was thinking today how they can upload information into computers that then you can take that information and 3D print objects. So why not, if you've got the human genome and you've got very highly refined 3D printers that can print biological mass. Now, I know the stuff in the public sector is not, that they can't print people, but they're printing essentially not even organs yet, but what do they call them? There's these certain organoids that they're printing that they can test pharmaceutical drugs to see what happens and such. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were highly capable printing techniques in certain sections of, DOD classified kind of stuff that was working on printing organs. And in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if they could print people. And so if they're concerned about the end of the world, then you could digitize everything. You could launch it into space. And then you've got the blueprints for, hopefully there's an advanced society or an advanced civilization that's going to see that, and you'll pick it up and they're like, oh, here's all the data. Let's print up this civilization. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's already been done before. I mean, the universe is a big place, and who knows how long the universe has really been here. I don't know if I believe the whole Big Bang theory, right? Like there's nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's everything.
Yeah, that makes no sense at all, right? I mean, that's like, how do you get something from nothing? It just doesn't usually happen. So, obviously, when you read the Emerald Tablets, it gives you that whole concept that there are different levels of consciousness, because we can see it even here, in this existence, all the way down to, the tribes, the native indigenous peoples that, are just still living with the earth, all the way up to the monks in Nepal, who are in constant meditation. So why can't there be, other civilizations and other biospheres we call planets, or whatever they are, that are on higher levels of consciousness than us? And even here. So then, okay, this is why we need to talk, because I have people that I meet in my journey of this whole experience that just open up to me and tell me things. And I have a friend who's from Russia. He has a friend who shared with him, that because he lives here in Georgia, he has a friend in Russia who years ago sent him information about these Russian scientists who went up into the mountains of Russia to explore a cave. And they said that came out in a newspaper, this whole article. These guys went into the cave, but they got to a point where they couldn't go any further. It was like an invisible barrier that kept them from going further. And one of their party was able to go forward. So the one guy was just encouraged to go forward and go to the end of wherever it led to. So he goes and explores the cave, and it ends in a cavern that opens up where there's a man standing And this, the whole Indiana Jones scene comes to mind, where the man is standing in the middle of all of these stone sarcophaguses. And this man is larger than any average man. He's, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 feet tall. I don't remember the exact height, but he's tall, and he's just standing there. And the guy is like, "Who are you?" The man standing in the middle of the room actually did a telepathic communication with the man and told him that he was guarding over the others. And he's like, "Well, what are these stone boxes?" He said, "These are the others, and they are sleeping. They're kind of in a state of stasis. And they're there for when the world needs them. They're just waiting. They're the watchers." He said they were the watchers. And I was like, what? I'm like, that coincides with what we hear out here about the watchers. But, we've always been led to believe that the watchers are evil, or, whenever you read books, it's like, oh, the watchers are evil. I don't think so. I think the watchers are higher consciousness beings, knowing that there's going to be a time like now where we're going into the age of Aquarius, where things are going to start shifting and changing, and our consciousness is going to awaken to all of these things that have been hidden for so long. So I guess, I don't know if they've come out of their cave yet, but that would be interesting to know.
That's cool. That's super cool. And that would make me think of a theory that I was talking about a couple of years ago. When you look at the mound builders out here and some of the discoveries where they've found people buried with relics, and like these relics remind me of some of the relics in Egypt. And I wonder if the mound builders were attempting to mimic these higher these higher technological civilizations. And they would see these pyramids, and these pyramids were actually power stations. Not only were they power stations, but they were locations for advanced civilizations to travel the stars. And then when they went to Earth, they have this GPS that's locked into these pyramids, but also they were able to mentally, like literally a Stargate, where they could travel the stars mentally and communicate with other beings in certain locations in these pyramids. But certain cultures would see these when they traveled, and they would want to mimic them. So they're coming back and they're trying to build these great pyramids. They are building these great mounds, but they're not quite as advanced, and they're different purposes. Like they're up there doing ceremonies and showing off with with their dances and rituals and rites, versus these other pyramids that are literally connected to the star systems. And, you've got these intergalactic beings that are traveling with supreme technologies. But when you brought up those people, the beings, possibly the watchers, or highly advanced beings that are here to help humanity, and they're in this stasis of hibernation in these stone chambers. What if that explains some of these mummies that we see, that they were wanting to preserve their bodies because they had seen other bodies reincarnated. And so they thought, okay, well, let's do our very best to preserve the bodies so that we can reincarnate, because maybe these beings will come back and reincarnate us. And maybe that's why there were certain mounds where certain graves were in the States or here in America, because they thought that if they had a pyramid, or like some of the effigies that you'll see, these effigies of certain animals as well, you can see them from like an airplane or a satellite. That was their way to, in hopes of being reincarnated. The gods come back, the gods return, and they'll reincarnate them. And I think that explains kind of the graves that we see today, where people are put in graves, but it's a totally barbaric way. Like, man, I just go ahead and burn me when I'm dead. I want, spread my ashes. Do not fill me up with plastic liquid and then put me in a box underground. No, thank you.
I'm like, just dig a hole and throw me in. I'll be fine with the roots of the trees or something.
Bahala.
No, right? Yeah. So we have here in Georgia, we have what they call an ancient Mayan site. And it was actually, they did a feature on it on America Unearthed. So they came out and tested
Scott Walter.
Yeah. So he came out, and tested the soil and found that they used Georgia clay to create the Mayan blue. And I went up to that archaeological site and camped on the grounds. Don't arrest me. But I wanted to see. And I started kind of getting the notion that this is not some primitive person or peoples that made this, because a lot of the stones that I was taking photos of were cubes. They had cube shapes and angles, 90-degree angles. And I'm like, you know what? There's something else. There's an untold story here. And I don't know what it is. I should have taken my dowsing rods or something. But I, hiked and traversed the trails over there and went in and out. They do have these stone structures everywhere. Like there's walls that will, lead down and then make a right angle. And you're like, okay, that doesn't seem all that primitive. But then there's these cairns. They're like cairns or something. They're just stacks of stones in a round circle. And you're like, what in the world is that? I got the sense that it was more like Celtic or Nordic or something of that nature. The Mayan thing, I was like, it doesn't really feel Mayan. I've been down to the Mayan pyramids, and I mean, it's kind of similar, but kind of not. And the petroglyphs, so this place has petroglyphs, and it's called Track Rock Gap, and they have at the parking lot is a tiny little parking lot that fits about 4 cars. They have these rocks that have petroglyphs. Now, the thing to know about petroglyphs is they're not always just glyphs. They're not necessarily, something like, oh, they call it track rock because it's animal prints, that they were primitive and no, you know what? These things are images that act with our subconscious mind. And I'm sure an advanced mind would know absolutely what these images are, Yeah, Track Rock Gap. So it's fascinating. It is a fascinating archaeological site. And so they're calling these things, these are animal prints and stuff that they were trying to put. I was like, no, like bird feet.
Oh, bull crap.
I'm like, no.
I'd like to sell you a timeshare. Who wants to buy a timeshare? The maintenance fees are really high. But you're going to love it when you can get in. Maybe if you're lucky. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, totally animal prints. When I hear stuff like that, I just want to say to these archaeologists, how much money did you pay for your degree? I'm sorry. You spent how many years being indoctrinated with BS? I mean, that is not animal prints. That is some kind of we've been spending the past few years uncovering these petroglyphs and connecting the dots. And a lot of them seems like they're portraying cosmic events that took place, turning them into anthropomorphic figures. So like a comet or an asteroid strike or a major solar flare, they would turn into like an actual god, or they would deify this solar flare or this comet or this asteroid. This looks different. This does not look like the stuff that we have been uncovering out here. That is really odd.
Yeah. So, it's very hard to see
comet
stones.
Comet? Sorry to interrupt, but do you think maybe a comet or something?
Yeah. Whether it's some sort of map for someone to follow things on the ground, or if it's celestial
star map.
Yeah. I mean,
star map. Holy crap. You just showed off. This is a freaking star map. I got to send this to my friend Wayne. Thank you for showing us this. This is wild. I think that's what it is. I literally think it's a star map.
Yeah, please. Well, by all means, because I haven't investigated it enough to know exactly, what it is, what it entails. But it's hard to see the petroglyphs on the stone. They're sort of worn away and weathered. And a few months ago, someone actually went up there and, just took up spray can and did some stuff, but they got it all off. They cleaned it up. This is what's so frustrating about the lower states of consciousness that our existence is immersed in right now. There's so much ignorance, but it's part of the Kali Yuga. It's a part of the Yuga cycle, and we always go through this. We're going to reincarnate into the next body, the next version of this self. And I guess we'll just keep going along the different astrological signs above our head in the heavens. You know, the heavenly bodies are the biggest clock that we can go by. And we've not been taught all of that knowledge. It's been held from us. So, but yeah, please get your friend to try to, you know, look at that, and maybe they can decipher it some. But I truly felt like it didn't feel like a Mayan ruin. I think they just put a label on anything and just to try to explain certain things. But I believe that there was a world civilization, and what we're seeing is, you know, again, it felt very Celtic to me. I don't know why, but you know, I have Celtic blood somewhere in my DNA, and I've experienced that in past life sessions too. Again, amazing stuff. If you haven't had a hypnosis session, QHHT, I encourage everyone to go have one, because you will find out deep-seated feelings about your life. Like in this life, I've felt really strongly connected to the Renaissance era and violin music and Lord of the Rings. I mean, not Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Dance, you know, that whole Celtic step dance stuff. I felt connected to that. And I didn't know why until I actually had a hypnosis session. And it started coming out, you know, it was evolving out of me what I experienced in, I guess, one of my more recent past lives. It's bizarre, but you can't make some of this stuff up. I'm telling you, you really can't. So I used to have dreams of drowning and falling from a high place. As a child, I would have these dreams, and up until probably my late 20s, it started tapering off. But in my past life session, I found that I was a warrior. I was a big burly warrior man. And I was a part of a clan's, it was a small clan of people, but I was closely tied to what I called my warrior brothers. And it was only 4 other men, and we were like the protectors for a small village of people. And we got assaulted in the early morning hours and got waylaid by a neighboring clan. I guess it was someone, you know, some clan that we were fighting with. And I lost all my brothers in battle, and the entire village that I was, you know, entrusted to protect. And I felt guilty. Like I could feel that pain and sorrow. So I threw off all of my protective gear. I had a loincloth. I threw myself off of a cliff onto some rocks. It was about a 400-foot drop onto some rocks and into the water, and I drowned. So, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy, but you know what? It just made so much sense. It started connecting dots in my own life. And then, you know, once you've had one session, there's usually another life up to bat, you know, like another past life that needs to be cleared, or there's some connecting point. So I have another weird story about a past life for you. So, you know, I've been an avid gamer ever since Pong came out. Like I was a little kid when Pong came out, and I've been playing all these games, and I have some of the Assassin's Creed games. Well, one of my favorite ones was Origins, and I just like riding the horse and going around and exploring and looking at things and discovery. You know, that's my whole thing. So I'm riding in Alexandria on the horse for the first time, and I go to this warehouse where they have all of these statues. They had Greek statues sitting in a warehouse. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because I've always been attracted to like what they say Michelangelo's work is. I'm starting to kind of question everything now with Tartaria. But I'm looking at these statues in the warehouse in the game. And all of a sudden, I had this overwhelming longing to be back in a place that I could not go back to. And I started weeping and sobbing over this video game. I got triggered. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, this is a video game. Why am I crying? It was overwhelming as an emotion, though. Like I was feeling like I was like I couldn't ever go back there. I couldn't touch it. And I was like, this is confusing. So fast forward to last year when I took a different level of hypnosis from someone else, because I wanted to kind of, you know, see what the difference was. And I took this class, and we had to exchange sessions. Well, I was in Alexandria in one of my sessions. I was a seer. kind of like a sorceress. I didn't really do dark magic, but I was a seer for mostly I was hired by one of the pharaohs. And I saw myself in my temple, which was very dark, and I had a basin of water, and it kind of looks like the bird baths people use, with the concrete, but it was bejeweled and it had water in it. So I used it as a scrying mirror. Well, as I'm looking at this scene, kind of moving through this scene, I walk to where the front door is, and I'm standing there, and I see these polished black columns. And it's some sort of stone, but they had a gold ring around about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom. And across the cobblestone road was a low wall that was about 3 feet high or so, but I could sense that there was an enormous staircase. Like if you were on the road, you could go down to the end of the street, and then there would be this huge staircase. So I was kind of on the corner, I guess, and there was a huge staircase that went up somewhere that I didn't know. But I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, this anubi comes up. Anubis, the black jackal-headed dog. He comes for me. He's got a spear. He's black. He's got a dog head. He comes up to me silently. I knew exactly what he wanted, because all of those anubi, I call them anubi. I don't know if that's the plural form or not, but there was a bunch of them, and they had been basically created to be the guards or guardians for the pharaoh. So this thing comes for me and summons me for the pharaoh, because I knew intrinsically on the inside I had done something against the pharaoh's wishes. Like he wanted me to do something for him, but instead of doing it for him, I did it for someone else and went against his wishes, which was not something you needed to do back in that day. Anyway, so I go down to, now, one thing to note, that this Alexandria was lush with all kinds. It was almost like a jungle scene. I go down to the left, and I go down to the desert floor, which I couldn't really, I'm like, why is there's jungle here, but then you go down these steps and you get to the desert floor, which was sand. It was just odd. I'm like, okay, this seems weird, and I don't know if this is real. But when I get down there, I'm expecting, maybe seeing a chariot or something. I could not have even fathomed what was in my vision next. It was a hovercraft that was like a Fabergé egg, because it was all gold and it was bejeweled. The thing was probably 8 feet long, and it was hovering off the ground about 3 feet. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, is this real? Did this really happen? I mean, was this something in the past? I don't know. My mind is like just going. So I'm like, hey. So I get taken off to the pyramid, which I also thought was strange, because outside of the pyramid, there was a set of columns, which is to be expected, but then there would be a triangle. So it was an open walkway path that had a set of columns, and then a triangle, and then a set of columns, a triangle, set of columns. And it was like you were just walking through this open air walkway. It's kind of like, I don't know where this stuff comes from, I don't know if that was ever a thing or not. So I get into this pyramid, and there's a low dais on the left where it's like 3 tiers, where people like a council would sit, because there's pillows there to sit on. And I'm just waiting for the pharaoh to come in. Now, unfortunately, this is the part that kind of stinks, because I was like anticipating what was going to happen next. And the person who was giving me my session started pulling me out of hypnosis, because it was either, I can't remember if it was time to go to lunch, or if it was something was shifting in the class. And I'm like, no, I need to know the rest of this story. Because after this session, I said, you know what? I'm going to go in that video game, and I'm going to find my temple. I know it's there. I mean, the craziest thing, but I said, I know it's there. I went to Alexandria, and if you've played the game, there's this huge temple on top of this massive staircase thing. And I said, okay, at the base of this thing, there has to be a building that is similar to my temple. And I'd be darned if that temple wasn't down at the base of that huge staircase. And the black columns are there, And the stone wall across the street, I'm like, I can't make this stuff up. I'm like, how did I know this stuff was there? I'm like, I didn't know that game that well, but I just can't explain some of this stuff. Maybe it's just residual memories. I don't know. Have you ever had any experience like that? I mean, like just kind of like, whoa, that's kind of like deja vu or.
Oh, I have deja vu quite a bit. Yes. I don't know if I have a past life memory that's that vivid, but I have questioned some possibilities before, but I just haven't gotten deep enough into it. I did do a hypnosis session about 12 years ago where she took me into it was like a past life regression session, but she didn't take me to she didn't ask me specific questions about who I was. She just asked did you do this? Did you do that? And that was interesting. And I'll tell you, some of the most powerful, I think about certain times that I was hypnotized by another gal about 10 years ago, and some of the stuff that she helped me work with, I still won't say certain things. And if I do, I'll correct myself because of those sessions from that long ago, which is pretty powerful. It's very powerful. So, that's really cool that you have a chance to actually do the work and the research into past life memories and the quantum connections. It's really interesting.
Well, yeah, I believe that the future will hold a lot of this information. Are you familiar with Marcel Vogel's work?
No.
Okay, you've got to get on this train because this is no less than amazing. And I'm telling you right now, this man worked for IBM for 27 years. Before he worked for IBM, he was studying the consciousness of plants. And he actually I think he co-wrote the book, The Secret Life of Plants. But so he discovered, that after experimenting with plants with many different ways, that when he was at a conference overseas, and I think he said he was in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia or somewhere, that he wanted to communicate with one of his plants back at his lab in LA at a certain time. And he told his assistant that he would be communicating with the plant right at 3:00. And they had the plants hooked up to these machines. They're basically I guess, lie detector machines or something. There's something that can read the vital feedback of a plant, and the different emotions that a plant can elicit. So at 3:00 or whatever time it was, he started communicating telepathically with the plant, and the machines at that moment started reading Marcel's thoughts. So they were responding to his thoughts. So time, didn't exist for that experiment to happen. And so after he had worked with the plants, I don't know, I'm not sure how he got into IBM, but he was working with crystal technology for IBM. And after 27 years of research, he found that crystals hold unlimited amounts of memory, and that once a crystal is cut to specific shape, which is basically a scalar wave shape that is based off of the tree of life, that it will amplify your thoughts. So basically like a magic wand, he cut his own crystals, and they're very expensive. These things are not cheap, but there's only one person that cuts the crystals that I know of, and his name is Drew Tosley. And there's a lot of fake Marcel Vogel crystals out there. He was able to do amazing things. He teaches you on YouTube how to heal yourself and others with a crystal. And I've started doing this. I've started sharing this information on my own channel because I feel like we need this knowledge, of what our actual bodies can do. It's really our thoughts and our intentions that are creating this reality. And the crystals actually just amplify those thoughts. So it acts as a diode for our energy. When you squeeze a crystal, it becomes piezoelectric, and it gives off an electrical charge. That's why they use crystals in our computers and our watches and things like that. They hold memory and they give off electrical currents, once they're connected to things. So he did a lot of different experiments, and I'm telling you, I want to divulge a lot of this information, but I'm also kind of cautious because we're still in lower states of consciousness, because what you can do with the crystal is no less than amazing. If you learn how to meditate and work with pranayama, which is the inner workings of your body, the breathing techniques with the oxygen, we're getting into the elemental forces of the body, the air, earth, fire, water, and ether. And when we start learning these processes very well, we will be able to affect the outside world with just our minds and creating things with just our thoughts, just like what Thoth describes in his book. And Marcel is, he's got hours and hours of videos that one of his friends uploaded for him, because Marcel died, I think, in 2010. And there's a lot of information. I mean, it is profound knowledge, because that's what I'm after in this existence, is the most profound and preternatural knowledge that anyone could ever find about yourself, mostly, and the abilities that we have that are lying dormant. Well, he was able to levitate things with his mind and the crystal, but these are the things that we have to be cautious of.
Yeah, let me jump in there. How do you know that? That's a bold statement.
He talks about this. He talks about all of his experiences with it's transcendental meditations and things that you have to learn, but the crystal will amplify your thoughts. And so I have been practicing just with a natural crystal, and I have one here. I keep one with me wherever I go, in case I come across someone who may need to be healed in a way, because you can release tension and things from the body. Now, a natural crystal is the most important because it maintains the earth consciousness and it has not been altered in its form. So, as you're working with this, you're always meditating with the upper part of the crystal, and you release the memories of the crystal. You can feel this. That's what's interesting about this experiment. You can feel the difference when you actually release the energy, and then you feel the crystal, and then you charge the crystal with love, and you can tell the difference again, because it'll be sticky. Marcel teaches this, and this is where I've learned all my information. So I've just said, what can it hurt? I'm going to try it on myself, because I was in a car accident last year. And I was like, well, let me just release some of this tension that I've got that won't let go, between my shoulder blades. And you can do this process where you heal yourself. And let me tell you, it works. Like I physically felt it work, and I've been helping other people using Marcel's method. I've been helping other people release their pain as well. If you think about it, our cells, again, this is getting into Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, where water holds memory. Well, what is our body made of? It's made of water. Everything out here in existence is made of water. I mean, that's how powerful this information is. Dr. Masaru Emoto and Marcel Vogel, because Marcel Vogel went into meditation to try to find out, how could he register what was happening in a crystal? And he got the information to study water. And when he cut his crystals to the shape of the tree of life pattern with all these different sides, he found that the resonant frequency of the crystal and water were the same. It was 454 hertz. But so I see this as maybe it's just a solidified version of water, that's in a set state of matter for us and what we know about solid, liquid, and gas. And then the water, of course, can make a solid being frozen. And you can study it when it's frozen because of the ice crystals and things.
Can you melt a crystal though?
Yeah, I guess they can melt. They melt them and make them into glass and different objects. But when you melt it, it loses its consciousness. It loses its abilities. This is something that Marcel teaches too. He said that Only the naturally formed crystals will hold the consciousness and hold your consciousness in it as a memory that can be extracted. So have you heard about the chronoscope and chronovisor?
What is it?
The chronoscope and the chronovisor. Have you heard about those devices?
Sounds cool.
Oh, listen, you got to know about this. So it kind of reminds me of Polaroid cameras and how they work, you know, how the film develops as it sits. So obviously they took, and this is based on Marcel Vogel talks about how he was able to borrow the Delaware camera. The Delaware camera came out of England and it was owned by the Delaware family. Well, the Delaware camera, you could take an image and then I believe it was something about the history, like you, in some of these cameras, you can actually turn dials and go into the past of someone's life and see the things that they did leading up to the point of the photo. This is what's crazy. And, you know, it comes into Project Looking Glass and all that stuff that's going on. The chronoscope. So it was either chronoscope or chronovisor that was invented by an Irish woman. And she took a photo of one of the bishops, I believe, of the Vatican, or she took a photo of someone that was very important and turned the dials. And of course, you know, these people are scandalous. So she, oh, you found it. Yeah. So they realized that this man that she had taken a photo of had done all this scandalous, so, you know, slept with other women, and he was married, and you've done all these nefarious things. So they basically devised a plan to discredit her and do all these vile things to her. And then she eventually ended up disappearing. But yeah, these things are amazing. They use crystal technologies because Marcel.
It says, let me jump in. Listen to this. Sure. According to Brune, the chronovisor was developed by Father Pellegrino Bernetti, a Benedictine monk. Bernetti allegedly kept the device secret until the early 1960s when he confided in Brune and told him that 12 scientists, including famed physicist Enrico Fermi and former scientist Werner von Braun, helped him build it. Made of cathode rays, antenna, and metals that receive sound and light signals on all wavelengths, the chronovisor purportedly allows the team of scientists to document events of the past, including the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The machine, therefore, could validate the teachings of the Bible or discredit them simply by providing a firsthand look into the past. If that's true, boom, that's the Project Looking Glass type technology, possibly bending light somehow. Hello. Yes. Wow. You just taught me. You just totally schooled me. Thank you, Ellen.
No, this is why we need to connect, is because there's so much information. So there was a woman, she's an Irish woman, and she created the chronoscope then, because I always got those confused since they were, you know, one was chronovisor and one was chronoscope. And then there's the Delaware camera. And I had Dan Willis on my channel also discussing the Delaware camera and how he actually experienced it. So it uses, all of these things use crystal technology, which is part of those tubes that they have in there. Like they have different things in there, different components that use crystalline properties. And Marcel says that if you add one drop, it's like 1 microgram or something of silica to a solution of water, that it will hold the memories of your mind. So what you can do is you have an image in your mind's eye and you focus on a plate with the solution. Your thought then goes into that plate and can be looked at in a particular microscope, or like the Delaware camera did. It's crazy. It's thought transference, and it goes into crystalline solutions and it holds that memory. This is crazy new technology, but I guarantee you that those other people on the other end of our society, that they already have this knowledge and they've known about it for a long time.
Well, so I'm looking up that camera. How do you spell it?
Yeah, De La Warr. So it's I think it's DE and then LAWARR. It's three different words. De La Warr camera.
Keeps coming up. Delaware camera. No, not a Delaware camera. I want the Delaware.
Let me see what I can find. Delaware.
Keeps taking me to like Delaware camera. Get yours today. 4.4 ratings out of 200.
Okay, I found it. Let me. I'll share this with you on my.
Okay, let me give you. Multiple participants can share a screen.
It's on Ether Force. I can give this into the chat here. I'm gonna bam. Here, you can go to Ether Force.
Stand by. There it is. The Ether Force.
Yeah, listen.
Get yours today.
But it talks about Marcel Vogel.
Here it is. The De La Warr Psychotronic Camera Project. And this person claims to have worked on this project with Marcel and claiming it to be an interdimensional imaging device. It was imported from England to the lab, 5 feet tall. Wow, man, if that's legit. Here's the schematics for it.
Yes, exactly. Like, why aren't we making this ourselves?
Let's make one. Oh, let's make one.
No, right.
Do it.
Here
it is. Wow.
Yeah, look at this.
We got to make this. It looks like an old brick cell phone right there. That thing does. Like that. Hello? I'm ready to
right?
Those bricks emitted a ton of radiation, EMF radiation, versus these new ones are anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody got scared with 5G and like, oh, 5G sucks. It's so weak. It won't even go through a raindrop. That's why they want those antennas on every corner. Yes. I don't need 5G. Every time 5G is on my phone, it's slower. So I don't know. I don't get it.
Oh, no. Well, you know what it is too. I don't know. There's another person that I came across on that 5G thing. Barry Trower was a microwave weapons expert. And he said, absolutely, they use that for military applications before it was ever, said that it's going to be in the telecoms companies now. And I'm like, that's a weapons, it's a weapons program.
It's a broad spectrum though. When they say that, like, are you talking about 28 gigahertz? Are you talking about 14 gigahertz? Or, I mean, what's the frequency? Because 5G is like this huge spectrum. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's more for like tracking. That's what I see it for, right? Because you've got pinpoint accuracy with 5G, where it could just be connect to the Internet of all things, whereas like 4G and 3G and radio waves actually are it's a different frequency, so it'll go through the body. Like, I'm like, what's worse, 4G or 5G? I mean, so yeah, I don't know, but it's interesting.
I just don't know about the whole 5G thing. It gets weird when you keep going. Yeah. I mean, we don't need it, because if there's touting that it's so great, why do we need it everywhere?
Right. But yeah. So look at this. This is what the camera system's supposed to look like. Here's the photos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The witness plate.
Look at that.
Yeah, I've looked at all this stuff and it is amazing. So we just need some people to kind of be the curious ones to go and create these things, because it's a lot of technological things. Now, see, you've got the spiral there. That spiral, I'm telling you, this is the Tesla coil idea.
Yeah.
It does things. We need to know this stuff.
Oh, like, so I used to be into like pyramid power big time, where I was making cardboard pyramids, and I was getting the ones made out of titanium alloy, and I was aligning them magnetic north, and I was doing all these experiments, and it was pretty cool. And I don't know, maybe the food lasted longer. I did some experiments with water and food and other things, but really, I mean, we need to figure out like the math, like what we're looking at here, but also add the tech behind it. So, cardboard pyramid, super cool. You might even be able to mentally make it, work somehow. But if we make like this titanium alloy pyramid that's got these schematics and it's got all this other Tesla stuff in it, then maybe we can make a flux capacitor or something,
Yeah, you know what though? I mean, do you know how much the Russians have studied pyramids? Like I've been all down that trail too,
Oh
where the
yeah.
Russians they've done all these experiments and they found that the best type of pyramid was actually made of fiberglass because and it was at a 144. It was like a steeper angle because all it's doing is it's harnessing the orgone energy from the earth, and the orgone energy, it swirls up in the pyramid. So the pyramid is basically, if you look at it, it's an upside down scalar wave. Like a scalar wave is kind of like this, and the pyramid is basically, funneling the energy that's being emitted from the earth going up into the tip. But as it goes up, it's spiraling around on the inside. I had a friend over to my house. I have a copper pyramid sitting on my living room floor. It's a meditation pyramid. And she came to my house for the first time. She'd never seen the pyramid. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw it. She was like, I can't get near stuff like that. I can feel the energy coming off of it. I was like, well, don't be afraid of it. So this is what's weird too. So she's type O, she's one of those O people with the blood type. And she was afraid.
You mean O negative?
Yeah, like she's one of the rarest blood types. And
so she's got more copper in her blood. Literally.
So,
yeah.
I mean, so she's, she has weird experiences, but she comes to my house and she's afraid of this pyramid. But later that evening, because she was staying the night, she goes, I was going to bed. It's about 11:30. I was like, I'm going to bed. She had her music playing on her phone. She comes out of her bedroom. She goes, you know what? I think I'll go sit under that pyramid. Because I told her, I said, it's just for meditation. It takes your intentions and shoots it up into the cosmos. And she was like, okay, well, I think I'll go sit under it. And I was like, well, that's good. She's embracing it, like she's not afraid of it. So she went in there and she was listening to music. At 1:30 in the morning, I wake up and I hear her music playing, and she wasn't back in her room because her light was on. I was like, well, I guess she fell asleep under the pyramid. Well, at 6 a.m. in the morning, it's dark. She's knocking on the door of my room. She's like, Ellen. I'm like, what? She's like, are you awake? I'm like, well, I am now. She's like, do you have someone else staying here? I was like, no. What are you talking about? She's like, you sure there's not someone else? I'm like, of course not. This is my house. Well, she goes, I just came out of the restroom and there was a man standing there. So this is what happens. I think it activated something in her DNA or something in her consciousness. She goes, there was a man standing there. She's like, I'm not making this up. She's like, I promise that there was a man standing there, and he was about 5'9", and he had a beard and long hair to his shoulders. And he goes, hey, Tammy, Ellen told me you were here. So she goes, oh, well, I thought that he was somebody in our film union. And so I hugged him. And she's, this is the kind of embarrassing part, but she goes, when I hugged him, he kind of got wood, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah. So I pushed him away, and she goes, no, you go back to your room. And so he went into the wall. I was like, Tammy, what'd you bring in my house? I was like,
a horny ghost. Whoa.
I was like, are you kidding me, Tammy? I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Think how long it's been since he's gotten any. Jeez.
And I told her, I said, so listen, I said, you got to listen to this, Tammy. Obviously, I didn't tell this entity that you were here, or whatever. I mean, this is ridiculous. So that's where the whole lie thing comes in. And she goes, yeah, I know, but I didn't make this up. I'm like, look, I believe you because someone else has had a story to tell about my house. I live in an old house. It was built in 1892, so.
Was he dressed like, was he dressed different?
No, I mean, she said that, he's just wearing, I guess, normal clothes.
I have never, and she actually felt it. That's what makes it even weirder, right?
That's what makes it. I think somehow she was crossing dimensions. Because they say that all of the dimensions are right here. This is in science, because again, this is more stuff that I've traversed in my experience. That scientists have found that, they discovered 11 dimensions, and they're like pages of a book, that they're all on top of each other. And to access them, all you need to do is have a frequency device that can get you there. Change your frequency, you can go there. That's how I comprehend how this works. Do you happen to have you read the book, The Keys of Enoch?
I haven't, I mean, I've actually read the book of Enoch.
Yeah,
I've read
no, this is a
a
different
few books of Enoch. I've read a few different versions, like 3 of them, but not the keys of Enoch. I've studied this, the actual calls of Enoch, the Enochian calls.
Okay, yeah, yeah. This is completely different. And it has Yahweh. It has the Hebrew letters on the cover in gold, and it says Yahweh on the cover. But on the side, on the binding, it says the keys of Enoch. In this book, you're not gonna believe this, but in this book, it took me a year and a half just to get through half of it, because it was like, it's got to be written by someone with a higher conscience or someone from another existence, because it's crazy. And in the pages of the book, I flipped through to kind of the, like, maybe 2/3 of the way in or so, just to kind of see what was there. They explain in great detail and mathematical equations how UFOs beam people through walls. I'm like, is anybody paying attention to this? Because this is stuff that needs to be known about how to do things, because it explains it. And that's why I say, so whoever wrote this book, the mind is on another level from what we're used to. It's hard to follow, and you have to go do research just to kind of look up the words, the terms, and I was like, this is incredible. I just determined that I need to just start over now that I've learned some more things. And it kind of ties into that whole dimensional thing, though, about we're living in a multidimensional existence, and all the dimensions and existences are right here. And that's what it's starting to explain why we see ghosts or other presences. We're seeing a glimpse in a time that is actually happening on another level, in another dimension. And according to, the readings of Dolores Cannon, when she was actually getting information from what's his name, Nostradamus. Do you know about her Nostradamus books? Where like Nostradamus started coming through some of her clients during the sessions that she was having, and she figured out a way to contact Nostradamus for like a year and a half, 2 years, something like this. She started writing all this information because Nostradamus wanted to know what his quatrains said. And so she was, writing all this stuff down, changing, writing in her books, I guess, the quatrains and what they should be. But then she asked him, she just thought, maybe I should ask him, is he on the other side? Is he like on the other side of life? But he goes, no, I'm living out my life currently. I was like, so time doesn't exist, and everything's happening right now in this moment. It's all one moment.
Yeah.
But,
wow.
Yeah, these hypnosis sessions are just amazing. Because I've even, that same client that did the remote viewing of Saturn, we got to talking about the moon. And I've done this with different people that have come. I've asked them to remote view the moon, and they say that there's entities there. Whether the moon is a hologram or whatever, I'm not sure, because I've seen some other things that these people with actual telescopes are discovering.
Let me stop you right there with that, because I've got a telescope, and yeah. I've got a nice telescope, actually. See it?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That's a nice telescope, right?
Yes.
So most of the stuff that I see, like there's a lady that posted a video recently. She's like, look at what Venus looks like. It's glitching out. And I'm like, that's because your focus is off. You've got to, you need to get the focus right. So, and those videos get 100,000 views or more. People are like, oh, I can't believe it. Venus is morphing. It's not Venus. It's the telescope or the camera that you're using. It's out of focus. I've made mistakes like that before, and I figured it out. And the very next day I was like, oh, oops, I'm an idiot. This is what it is. But so, like, if people don't know what it is, I get it. But I think a lot of people post videos and they know that it's just a lens flare, and they're like,
Yeah.
dude, Nibiru, look, can you believe
Oh
it? It's
yeah,
right
I've seen
there.
that. Yeah, I've seen that kind of stuff where they take a photo or video with their iPhone and they see the lens flare and it's, oh, there's another planet. I'm like, no, that's a lens flare.
Exactly.
It's silly stuff.
Or, oh
But
man, I know. And it's so crazy. But so the moon's there. The moon is definitely there. Now,
yeah.
what is it? I would say that it's an Anunnaki arc. It's like the original arc where they put, because, and look at it, looks like it's been beat to hell, right? I mean,
Yes.
It looks like it's taken a lot of pain and suffering. So it's as if it was almost put there to protect Earth and to balance Earth out somehow, like some very high level consciousness, high level beings put it there specific so that we can have this carbon-based life existence. And I actually talked to somebody that's very high up in the echelon of military, and he said that that's pretty much spot on. And there's a bunch of stuff in there that keeps life here available, or keeps it possible, I should say. But then, so that makes me question, why are so many people mining the moon? Like, because they are planning on mining the moon. Let me tell you this. I've got a friend that sells houses in the Northeast, and she told me that her corporate meetings, they're talking about building houses on the moon using 3D printers, and they're talking about this, and they're selling houses. So, I mean, there's definitely something else going on as far as what the moon actually is. But yeah, we're going to the moon. That's going to happen within 10, 15 years. You're going to see people on the moon.
Well, it's just crazy. Our existence is just so much farther beyond what we've ever been told. But so the person who had remote viewed Saturn and the moon, I got to talking about the stars. And they informed me, they're like, the stars are not stars as you know them. I was like, no, I know, I get it. They're like consciousness bubbles, because when we're born, there's a certain alignment over our head, and the consciousness is instilled within our form, our physical form. And that's what gives us the signs of the zodiac inside of us, like we are part of a celestial age, basically. And so he goes, yes, but where you see light poking through darkness, we see darkness poking through light. And I was like, I was just like taken aback, because if
that was the remote viewing session to Saturn.
No, this was of the stars. We were talking about the stars at one point during his session, and he gives me this information. I mean, this is profound knowledge. So because we have low levels of UV light in our cells. Scientists have found this, and they're discovering that pretty much everything here is made of light on some level. Well, if you are absolutely almost pure light, like Thoth describes in some of his teachings, then you're going to see everything else as darkness. Like anything else around you is going to be darker in form. And I was like, I never looked at it that way. And when you're looking up at the heavens, the celestial clock rotates differently from our calendar clock, which goes in the opposite direction. And I was like, what is that? And then I came across some information where if you were looking down on the heavens, even at the clock, they rotate in the proper direction. And I was like, whoa, for what, could be read in that. I was like, this is profound. So if you're a light being and you're inside what we would describe as the stars, then and you're looking down, and maybe these are just, points of light that are poking through the firmament or what. I don't even know what this existence is anymore based on all the stuff that I've found. Then, that light that's coming down, if you're looking down on the holes of darkness, because you'd be looking at darkness, poking up. It's kind of a mind boggle, you're just going, what? But it was so deep and profound. I was like, I've never thought of it that way. If you had an actual light body, a body made of light, like the sun, you would see everything else in a darker format because it's not emitting light, right? So that's kind of the whole concept. And I'm like, I never really thought of it that way. But yeah. And they're finding that, consciousness is in absolutely everything here. In our whole reality, everything is imbibed with our consciousness because we create things. Our thoughts create things. Our thoughts are scalar waves that go out and manifest and come back, whatever frequency we're resonating with. I've been practicing manifestation for a while now. Like, I have to tell you, I'm not in the film industry anymore because in 2020, they shut down the world. And the production that I was on Samaritan. And we had just set up a set in downtown Atlanta. And the next day we get the call, like, you got to come in. We're going to take this set down because they just shut down the world. I'm like, what? I'm like, what is going? So I haven't been back because I refuse to give up my DNA and all that stuff and wear masks. And, I have asthma, I have medical things. So I'm like, I'm not going to go do this. I have been manifesting my reality, just being out here saying, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to get back into my art. I'm going to help people. So I just sort of stepped out on a limb, and it's been such a blessing to be out here, helping and doing something, actually being in my soul purpose, I have to say. And I feel like everyone, like all of humanity, is feeling that call right now.
In this age,
like, Rex?
I agree. No, totally. That's so powerful. Like, if you can do what you were put here to do, then so many doors open up, so many opportunities. And then you start getting in the zone, and like, you're riding that wave of consciousness. You're riding the wave of creation and manifestation and abundance and happiness and joy. It's like, so yeah, follow your path. And you're right. I do think a lot of people are starting to question the status quo and to question their life and what they're doing with their life and what they could do different. And so that's so cool. Now, I'll tell you, like, I'm actually working on another graphic novel right now. We just finished up our first one. We're working on a second one right now. And these could potentially go into a series or a film because they're that awesome. And it's, when you brought up earlier about how writers, you said all writers are into the occult, or you didn't say writers, but you said all people.
Well, it's like the Hollywood, the script writers.
The script writers and the occult. And I find that fascinating because, first of all, the occult means, I wouldn't necessarily say everyone, maybe in certain circles, but but first of all, occult, one person might look at that as like, oh man, that's evil. And another person's like, oh, occult, secret, mystery, unknown. But I've studied the occult for like 20 years. Yes. So, and I'm writing stuff. So I'm guilty in that department, but the occult that I study is like hermetics and ancient history, mind over matter, how to be, how to like remote view, astral project, have an out of body experience, to influence others in a positive light, and to help the planet. And so I just think it's amazing. But you're right, like, so many people that do write for these large movies and these TV shows and even the video games. My brother brought that up yesterday. We're in the Matrix again. I gotta share this with you. You brought up the video games and how you're a big gamer. My brother is a big gamer, and it's so interesting that you said that. Where it goes.
Yeah, I can just tell because they use sigils. They're using all of this occult symbolism and things. And once it goes mainstream, people will know more about what we're talking about. And are you familiar with Jordan Maxwell?
Yes, I've interviewed Jordan a few times, and I need to get him back on the show again. He's a great guy. So I just want to share this with y'all real quick, how we're totally in the Matrix. So I said, cheers, bro. And then he texted me back, bro, we're brothers. Have you ever heard of the Dark Souls games? And I said, no. Are they epic? Like nothing ever done before. And it's deeply metaphorical and has lots of old world spiritual influences. Can I send you a video? Yes, please. So I watched the video, and he goes, so this may be a little like jumping in the deep end, but I think you'll appreciate the alchemical and Gnostic references. Just what you described. How cool is that? That was yesterday, last night.
All of this stuff, the games, even, they're coming out of Hollywood, basically. and we know how the CIA and Hollywood are hand in hand, but it's almost like they want people to kind of start discovering what they're really been putting in front of the viewer's eyes, because your subconscious mind is what is recording everything in your life. Absolutely. It is like a recording device that knows every moment you've ever lived and every life you've ever lived. It's like your super soul in a way, like your super conscious. But they've been using this because our minds create the reality. If you think about your mind, your thoughts create things, your mind creating your reality. What are they doing? You have to see it from a different perspective, like what is truly going on with the content. Now, it's important to note the content that's coming out of Hollywood and that's in these video games, because it's lower states of consciousness and it is dragging humanity down to the gutter, basically, and to the ditches of our minds. But in order to elevate, we have to know our darkness before we can know our light. And so it's almost like there's this soul process where in the Kali Yuga cycle, we have to experience the archons and the parasites, your mind parasites, all these different things, so that we can then start to grow out of it and make that choice. It's always a choice, because everything in this existence is also based on your free will. And your will is your choice of what you choose to have as an experience. So if you're choosing to not partake in, all these video games, there's just death and destruction and killing each other, or watching the Hollywood films where it's the same, very much the same subject matter, then you're choosing to go towards the light more, because they are really trying to, pull people into this realm. But I saw it years ago, and especially, with working on things like The Walking Dead, I had to tell my friends in a joking but not so joking manner that I worked for the devil, because it is subverting the mind. It is using the subconscious mind to create the reality that the Saturnian worshipers wish to see. Basically, let's just cut it down to it's.
Well, and this is where this is what I wanted to have a conversation with you about, because you brought up the Saturnian mindset and the Saturnian worship. And I am not sure if Saturnian worship was originally like bad or negative, yes, or dark. Yeah. And I'm starting to question if it's like a branch off. Like when you were showing me that book of Saturn, and like, let's take a look at that, right? Because that is Kronos, and the mythology of Kronos, the mythology of Kronos is Kronos eats his children. And my theory on this is Kronos is Saturn. Saturn at one point is actually much larger, is a brown dwarf star. And if you study a lot of the ancient mythology, you can connect the two. So if Saturn is much larger as a brown dwarf star, and it starts to get larger and it starts to expand, and it's like its own solar system. It's its own star, and it's got like all the interesting planets or moons that orbit Saturn. What if Saturn is getting larger for a while and it's starting to consume its planets? It's starting to consume its moons. And if Saturn is a star, and if stars birth planets, then we're watching this take place, as our ancestors are watching this take place in the heavens, and they're seeing this star get larger and consume what is around it. And so they're putting them, once again, like we're talking about the petroglyphs, deifying these solar events or these planetary events. Was Kronos a star? It starts to get larger and consume other planets. And then they reference that event as Kronos eating his children. And then people that follow the stars and follow the planets get in that mindset, like, because you've got the dark and the light. You've got those that follow the light, those that follow the dark, and everything in between. But you can take somebody that's Christian and they could be a great person. You could take somebody that's Christian, they could be a really dark person. You take somebody that's, any religion. So I'm wondering if they have taken, like, there's this ancient order that took that in the stars and they wanted to mimic it, and they figured out a way to harness power through the dark side, right? And that's the cult of Saturn. But it's not the original worships of Saturn, and that doesn't make Saturn bad. That just makes those people that are worshiping Saturn in that way, they're, what's the right term to use? They're like, they're tilted. There's something, there's something off that's making them follow that path, in my opinion.
And what you're obviously familiar with Franz Barden's work, right?
Oh, love Franz Barden, the best. I've got all of his books.
Yeah,
love
I do
Franz.
too. And yeah, I've had it for a while. I knew about his work from some other video that I'd watched. And so I started a group just recently to study Franz Barden's work and to actually put it into practice, and also incorporate other things like making sigils and, working with our innate abilities. Because I am very much on the same path you are with the whole psychic, I want to know my psychic abilities and the remote viewing and all of these things. But in Franz Barden, I feel like the macrocosm and the macros, which are the heavenly bodies over us, you can somehow pull forth the energy, the frequency that they emit. So if you're thinking about all of these planets, these spheres of energy, as Mars, Venus, Mercury, and Saturn, all the planets, that there's something that Saturn energetically represents. Now, I've been trying to kind of figure out, like, that's why I bought this book. I've only just started this book because I wanted to know a little bit more insight as to why the cult of the black cube is a thing. Like, why? Because out here in the world, based on Jordan Maxwell's findings, there's all this Saturn worship. With the black cube on the head with the graduates, and, Nike symbol, the swoop is part of the rings of Saturn, and all this stuff. And it's like, why is it Saturnian, and Satan is Saturn and all these things. I'm trying to get to that whole connection. But, I have many questions and not enough answers, like you and everybody else who's actually digging and questioning all of our reality.
Well, and check this out. I'm glad you brought that up. Satan, Saturn. A lot of people think of that. Satan is the adversary. Mm-hmm. So if Saturn is a star, and we're watching this take place in the heavens, and then then you've got the birth of the new star, the birth of the new son, Jesus Christ. The only way through the Father is through me, like a stargate, and the descriptions and all these astrotheological aspects of Jesus being connected with the Son, the new son. Well, if Saturn is the adversary to the new sun, it is like the opposing star. It's the dark star. And if you go back at a time where Saturn was an activated star and we were underneath the protection of this brown star, we would have less radiation, we would have less extreme weather, we would live longer, and there would be like that connection with Saturn. So maybe that's why, like, I know what you're talking about, the black cube. Yes. Also, Jewish traditions typically worship on Friday and Saturday, Saturn Day. And then you've got Sun Day, the new sun. But guess who's made Saturn evil and Satan evil? The Vatican. If you look at the Vatican and what they have done astrotheologically and how they have manipulated the world, then you have to start questioning, like, well, wait a second. Is Satan even... Is the description of Satan real? Because it talks about the snake in the garden, and then you can connect the snake with Enki, and you can connect Enki with Ea, and Ea being the progenitor of humankind, and his brother was Enlil. And in these ancient stories, Enlil is the one that wants to flood the earth because people are procreating too much and causing all of these problems, and he can hear them, and it's driving him nuts. And these are stories too, we got to remember. So who wrote the story? Who authorized the story? Who translated it? How do we know the story is legit? And that's why I think if you look at the astrotheological aspect in a lot of these stories and scriptures and mythologies, when I say astrotheology, I'm referring to the planets and the constellations and the zodiac. I think that we can get a much deeper meaning of what actually happened. But then we have to realize the people that were here at that time, especially the ruling class, they were mimicking the stars. They were mimicking the planets. So they might have thought that Saturn was their father. And they're like, whoa, our dad's pissed off at us because shit's going wrong. There's giant lightning bolts, like the thunderbolts of the gods.
Yeah. I mean, who knows, right?
Lightning bolt.
I mean, it's interesting though that, Iapetus ends up being the Death Star, of Star Wars. So, yeah, they're putting it out there in astrotheological, realms in our subconscious. And our subconscious absolutely knows these signs and symbols. Like it's so ancient, a lot of this stuff, this information, that we just don't remember it in our current consciousness, like the collective consciousness and the one that's, always thinking and doing. But the subconscious mind absolutely is connected to all things. And that's why people can remote view and also, be connected, like this whole thing that you're talking about being psychic, like you can know someone is about to call you or know who it is before you even pick up your phone. That's starting to come back to us because the frequencies are going up. The Schumann resonance is going up. A few years ago, I don't know if you know about in science, they said the stars were changing like color. They were getting brighter. The planets are changing color. All these events are happening. It's like we're going up, I guess, in the yuga cycles, which is good. Everything that was born of darkness is going to be revealed. And that's what we're witnessing. And I'm excited for the future. But yeah. So, but we need to talk though about this whole spirit. So I've got this book. Because of and I'm sorry to change gears, but the most important thing we can start talking about to help people right now is to get them to start realizing their own thoughts, which ones are their legitimate thoughts and which ones aren't. Because I experienced when I was on Halt and Catch Fire back in 2016, I was already on this path of awakening and learning all these things about the archons and the hidden controllers and the mind parasites, all these different, possibilities, because that's what I'm always experiencing, like you. Like I'm exploring possibilities. Well, they had called lunch. I was on set on Halt and Catch Fire. They called lunch, and we would just drop everything, all the personal belongings, and just go to lunch. I would bring my lunch because I'm very much aware of, eating healthy and all this, and I would eat organic. And the food out here affects my health. So I brought my lunch, but I was walking through Video Village where they have all of the directors' monitors and the producers and everybody, and they leave all their personal belongings. I'm walking through there thinking about my lunch and how I'm going to take a nap afterwards. And my eyes land on one of the director's chairs to my right, which had a black backpack on it. And the minute I just looked at this, as I'm in my own thoughts, this other thought form comes in and says, you want to take that? And I immediately was just so like, oh my God, like this really just happened. And I was thinking, I went inwardly towards whatever was developing this thought. I said, no, I do not, get out of my head. And I was fuming afterwards. I was like, oh my gosh, these things are really real. It tried to influence me. I can't believe it. I was thinking, this is what I'm talking about. If you know yourself and you know that you don't perform things like that, like theft or dark acts, anything against someone, then you got to start listening and questioning the thoughts that come into your head at certain moments and why they might possibly be coming into your head. Because if you've experienced traumas, pains, suffering, which we've all had, abuse, addictions, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, and you're constantly being influenced by a thought that you want to take that, it's not necessarily your thoughts. And this is why I say you got to get Jerry Marzinski in on your channel to talk about his experience, because he was a psychotherapist for many years and he learned about these things and about their existence because he had no clue. But when he started working with the schizophrenic patients in the psychiatric wards, all of a sudden, they'd be on this medication that would help get the thoughts out of their head. that would help them be better people. They wouldn't have all these weird, thoughts and emotional states. But he found out that they were coming off their medications, and he was wondering why, because he's like, okay, he started interviewing each one, and he said, look, do the medications help you? They would say, yes, they do. And he's like, well, if they help you, then why are you coming off your medication? And they're like, because the voices in my head told me that the therapists are trying to poison me. And so he was like, he's like, well, I'm going to make a deal with you. If you can come in here, we're going to like just do some one-on-one therapy. If you can come in here and tell me at any given point what the thoughts are telling you in real time, I won't make you take the medication, but I just want you to come and tell me things. So he started studying these people, and they would trust and confide in him. And he found out that whatever's happening, it's not what people say. These people are not crazy. They are being heavily influenced by dark forces that are attached to them through the lower chakras. I determine the lower chakras because whenever I do a body scan through hypnosis, it always seems to be in the stomach region or somewhere, in the lower part of the body. Like the other day I had a hypnosis session and it was in the foot. And I was like, in the foot. Okay, that's interesting. But there was like some weird slimy thing in the foot. And all you do is suggestive imagination, which is very important. And it removes the things. So it just proves that our thoughts are actually the most important thing in this existence, like your imagination. And why do they pull children away from their right brain? Once they get them in school, they start pushing them into the left brain. And they pull them out of the right brain and shut down that whole creative construct that comes when we're born. So it's all fascinating, but I do recommend Jerry Marzinsky, and he has a book too. Let me see what that was, because I pulled that out. An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. It's on Amazon, but I suggest you having him, on your channel just to interview him, because it's an incredible, incredible story of what he has discovered with these archons, or, these thought form entities. And I've seen how they've influenced my life. I've experienced traumas and abuse and all these things, just like a lot of people have. And that's what I realize when I stop and I look at all the people that come to me. Every single person that comes to me has had some sort of trauma in their life, or physical abuse, or mental, something that has imprinted into the cellular memory of the body, and also enabled other beings to kind of cut into their auric field and connect to their lower chakras. That's what's fascinating. And I'm just using this as a big experiment. I don't know that much, but I'm learning. And that's why I have this spirit releasement therapy book, because it's absolutely someone else's work, where they say that you can release these things from the body, the physical body, and how these things we can't see, the principalities of other dimensions we can't see, are absolutely everywhere all around us. So have you experienced thought form entities or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's been times before where stuff's popped in my head that I was just like literally, like, how did you get there? Why did you just think that? Because it was the opposite of anything that I would think. And it's only happened a few times, but when it does happen, I've been very, I observe it and I'm like, whoa, hold on a second, and it's very powerful. And I just want to say another thing too, that I was thinking about the whole worshiping of Kronos and the whole dark side of the Saturn worship. If I'm right, and if there was a time when Saturn was a star and it was like, and we were, we would wake up in the morning and we'd be like, oh, look at this beautiful, beautiful sky. And it was connected to, like, you've heard of Purple Dawn?
No, I don't think I've heard of that.
There's a song called Purple Dawn, and there's some esoteric stuff connected with it. Well, that would have been the color of our atmosphere. It would have been more purplish, right?
Yes.
So imagine everything's great, everything's awesome, and then all of a sudden, the star starts to change, and then the planets that you wake up to and see every day, they start to orbit different. And then one of them turns into like this giant asteroid and it starts heading towards Earth and causing all this electrical discharge. And then people are freaking out because they're now in a position where they have to find food and shelter, and there's scarcity, and everybody else is freaking out. So it's causing wars and destruction. And some people think that the planets are their parents. So that would create that's how, I mean, seriously, that could create a very dark cult.
There's so many different possibilities.
Whoa.
In
Just
our
thinking
reality.
about that. Right? I mean, that's like,
I know.
if that's true, and I could be way off here, but if that's the case, that could make a lot of sense. Like that could have started war and so many other just dark sides of humanity, like that never would have happened because they were just in a different situation.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
I've got some other things to ask you too, because there's some stuff that I came across, but I wanted to see if I could go to the restroom right quick.
Sure. Yeah, we've been talking for 2 hours.
I know. So I'm so excited because you're going to love this next thing. And I just want to see if you know about this next feature.
Okay. And we are back. So for this next segment, what are we going to talk about?
Listen, have you heard about the designing goggles?
The ones that can see supposedly like archons and stuff.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, because so they're called aura glasses, but apparently from the story that I heard initially, I remember when they first came out with the night vision goggles and they were infrared, like they were in red spectrum. I remember this. I was a kid, but they later turned them to green, and I kind of went, I wonder why they're green now, because it's kind of weird. I was like, green? Well, I came across this story recently where this man was talking about when they were in Vietnam and the helicopter pilots were flying, they had the gunners wear the goggles, the night vision glasses. And they started all of a sudden shooting wildly into the night, even though, there was nothing. They didn't have anything on radar. There was no enemies. The pilots were confused, but all the gunners just started shooting wildly. And when they got down to the ground, they were asking the gunners, what's going on? What are you shooting at? They said that they were sweating and their eyes were huge. They said there were demons that they saw that were coming at them. They were in the trees and they were pointing up at the helicopter, and they would fly up to the helicopter and they were trying to shoot them down. But obviously it had no effect because they're in another dimension. But that red spectrum, when you think about it, it's the lower chakra. It's one of the 7 rays of color that we can see. And the lower chakra is the red. And it's a lower wave, but now, they were using the FLIR photography with the yellow. Remember, I remember watching Ghost Hunters, and it was like a yellow color that they used for FLIR, and you could see the heat signatures. And apparently
that's thermal. That's thermal.
Yeah, exactly. So I just found it interesting because I'm like, okay, what are people seeing? Because they've outlawed design and dye, which is made from coal tar. And I'm like, if it's coal tar and it's not like some crazy thing that could blow something up, why would they outlaw it? And I think it's because they don't want us to know about these other dimensions or something. There's something about it. So there's a website that you can go, and I'll share that with you too, because I have that right here. The Museum of Tarot is actually manufacturing them in Tennessee. So I'm going to just put that in the chat real quick so you can have that. It'll be something else for you to examine, because I'm all over this kind of stuff. This is what I do. I'm like, I need some of these goggles.
Yeah, I remember that story. A lot of Vietnam vets were going crazy from looking in that night vision because they were seeing stuff that just was scaring the heck out of them. I mean, they were literally going nuts from the research that I have done, which is not a whole lot, but that's what you're referring to. And that is interesting. But I'm on the website right now. So Nashville Museum of Tarot and Divination. Is that the one?
Yes. And so they have the goggles. Apparently you can buy them.
Ooh.
And I was thinking about getting a pair and trying to get the different color spectrums because they have in Hollywood, they have the gels that they put on the lights for the lighting to put different colors out, and they have all of the different color spectrums. So I was like, you know what, this is time for some experimentation. If it really has the design and dye, then why can't you get some and change the color of the lens and see what happens, And so I went through all these different YouTube videos regarding these goggles and found some where people were actually creating infrared by combining two different gel colors, like the two different colors together. But that's with making glasses. It wasn't using the design and dye. But I was just thinking, we can absolutely start proving these dimensions are real to ourselves if we just start experimenting with all of these different tools that are available to us. I'm excited about it. I'm that person,
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
You're my brother from another mother.
Well, when I'm in Georgia, we're going to go looking for ghosts and vortexes.
Listen, my friend in my town has the ghost. She said anybody that comes there to stay, they have a nightmare about being chased or being drugged through the house by this ghost or something. It's really weird. And it's an old Freemasonic house. It has a symbol on the door, but there's an 8-by-8-foot cage underneath the house, in the middle, beneath the house.
And that's freaking creepy right there.
Yes. It's an old house. And when her HVAC person came, he's like, you got a cage underneath your house. She's like, what? He's like, yeah, it's 8 feet by 8 feet. And it's a cage in the middle underneath the house. I was like,
I wonder if there's certain like rituals to get to certain orders that they would use that. Because when you described it being in the center, maybe they were, hopefully it was just used for like non-violent rituals. But I know some of the stuff they do, like one of the rituals, I think they put people in a casket. And then you come out of the casket and you're like reborn kind of stuff. So hopefully it's that, not more sinister. Did they find any?
There's a ghost in the house. There's a ghost of a woman and people have seen her. But apparently there was a murder in the house. So there's probably more than one, but it's just weird. Well, who has a cage underneath their house? It was one of the houses that was left after Sherman's march to the sea, because it was a Freemason house. So it was kind of interesting.
Whoa.
Anyway, yeah, it gets weird. I mean, we can find all the weird places. So there's a village too that's out in Greensboro in Georgia that is Skull Shoals, and it's spelled Skull. And it got flooded because it's right near a creek, and all the buildings, there's different structures there still. I went out there and metal detected with my brother, but there are mounds, Indian mounds. There's one that's enormous, and I told him, I said, I bet there's a giant underneath that thing. I bet there's giant bones. I don't know why I feel this, but I'm like, I bet you there's giant bones underneath that mound. That mound is enormous.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
So yeah.
How far away are you from the Guidestones?
The Guidestones are it'd probably take an hour and 15 minutes. It's over by Athens.
It's not bad.
So, yeah, I've been out there, and that's kind of creepy too, in a way, just because of what all it says. I mean, you can't disagree with some of it. I mean, living in harmony and balance with nature. Yeah, why not?
Well, they got to throw in some they got to throw in some stuff there to make you go, well, it's, they just care about the earth. That's why they're saying that.
Yeah.
500 million.
But I want to know what's in the time capsule. What's in the time capsule under the ground there is what I want to know. Because there's a time capsule.
A virus.
Yeah.
Freaking totally 12 monkeys. Yeah. No, I think you're also not too far from, there's that, remember 10 years ago when they showed all those look like possible plastic caskets, and there was thousands of them?
And so there was somebody that I worked with on Vampire Diaries. He got to see that every single day. They were on one of the Georgia highways, and he said they're just stacked up in a train yard. And it was thousands and thousands of caskets. And he was like, wow, this is weird. This was 10 years ago, you know? So I don't know. It gets weird. There's all kinds of strange things in Georgia. And I have a metal detector, so I'm ready to go out and find things.
Okay. So you bring the metal detector. I'll bring the Geiger counter, the thermal, the night vision, the EMF detector, and some GoPros. And then this will be like, the secrets of Georgia, the mysteries of the mound builders. Why in the bleep is there a cage in the bottom of this house with the Freemason symbol on the front of it? Weird, man.
We'll do creepy tour of Georgia, you know, like all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
I'm into that though. You know, I met two women in my friend's store in downtown Jackson. Two women came into her store and they said they had been involved with an exorcism in Alabama, where this woman was, they said it was just like The Exorcist, where this woman was just completely possessed. She was speaking a different language. She was like talking in Latin, doing all these weird things. They had to call in a specialist because it got crazy. For 30 days, they spent, you know, trying to get this demon out of this woman. And I think they eventually succeeded, but that was incredible. You know, I've got their number too, because I was like, look, we need to talk. I'll join you guys. Let's do this stuff. Let's help people, because we got an extraction, you know, to do with all of humanity right now with all these entities.
Got a lot of work cut out for you, huh?
Yeah, I mean, well, once you realize it, you're like, wow, this is a mountain. But I do believe that, you know, as the frequencies are rising, I believe that these entities won't be able to attach anymore too. So, you know, that's what my whole concept is, the notion that, you know, maybe the sun is actually altering our DNA, you know, illuminating the frequencies inside of us to change the DNA. Do you know about the child who had 3 strands of DNA, the little boy?
I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess the strands of DNA, I keep hearing in metaphysical circles that we're going to get our strands, 12 strands back eventually as we progress, you know, upwards in spiritual force and everything else. Hey, I believe anything's possible, because they said that they were able to 3D print DNA, which is like, what? How do you do that? You know, the concepts are just like, where are they going with some of this technology?
Welcome to the future. The future is now.
Well, I believe, you know, all of that stuff's going to go mainstream as soon as we get rid of the cabal and the system that's been around in place for a long time. It's all just a part of the process, though, you know, of spiritual awakening and growth, going through the yuga cycles and going around the great year. So if we can just grab that concept and just hold on to it, like, okay, it kind of explains some things, because we just live, you know, such short lives. It's hard to fathom all of these greater constructs that could be possible around us. You know, this whole consciousness, like being able to create with just your mind alone. I mean, obviously it's a thing, because have you heard of the tulpas that can be created? Yeah. So why not? Our minds are very powerful tools, and we've not been taught how to use them properly. So, and I'd love to know how to remote view and do all this stuff. Have you been able to do it successfully?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done extensive training on remote viewing, and my protocols that I use aren't like the military protocols. When I do remote viewing, I'm just like, I usually know what the target is, so I'm not doing it blindly. But when there was one time when I interviewed Russell Targ where he had me do a quick blind remote viewing session, and it was like during the show, and I picked up the circle of this object that he was showing. But I haven't, like, the remote viewing is actually technical remote viewing is when you don't know what the target is. Mm-hmm. When I remote view stuff, I know what I'm looking for. But the stuff that I remote view, I don't know how to necessarily verify, because I have remote viewed Enceladus, and I was remote viewing the oceans in Enceladus, and I was seeing like these giant octopuses and this weird technology, but that could have just been in my imagination. So I don't know. We'll find out in a few years, maybe.
You'd be surprised what actually is out there, though, worlds within worlds within worlds. But I suggest, if you truly want to have a strange experience, put a crystal under your pillow at night.
I've done that before. It's uncomfortable.
Well, I put it underneath the pillow in the case, and my pillows are usually fluffy enough that I don't really feel it. But I have a huge amethyst, and I put that under my pillow. I was like, let me just see what this does. Oh my God, I didn't hardly sleep that night. My mind was just active, it was doing all kinds of stuff. It was giving off a frequency. And I was like, okay, this is insane, But the power, when you give it a little squeeze, it gives off that piezoelectric charge. But it's important to discharge the crystal of its memory. It holds unlimited amounts. If you listen to a lot of what Marcel Vogel tries to teach people, it's a lot of profound knowledge that the crystal holds unlimited amounts of memory. But once you connect your mind to a crystal, it's like a little recording device. It becomes a miniature version of you, because even if you put it down and you walk away from it, no matter where you go, it's recording your activity. And he said that this is going to be the technology of the future, where we just have a device that we can put the crystalline structure, whatever it is, on, and it will absolutely just have everything, recorded throughout the day. So we'll know our past, present, future, all this stuff, forward, backwards in time with the chronoscope and chronovisor. I mean, it's an interesting future, really.
I'm looking forward to it. And
yeah.
Wait, now, what's your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is ERA, E-R-A, of O-F, my, M-I-M-Y, ways. So, and I can post that up. Let me go get that real quick. I've only just started my channel because I was one of those people, I didn't like being in front of the camera. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do. But I said, you know what, there's just too much that needs to be spoken about. Yeah, this is it. That's it. Era of my ways. And so I have, I've delved down these different roads, and I interview people that I have found very interesting. There's profound knowledge to be had out in the world, if you just go out and curious enough to discover it. And that's just what I do. I'm like, I want to know more. What can I share with people? And especially with these archons and this crystal technology, and how I've been, looking into this Veda knowledge lately. I got asked to go to the Hare Krishna temple over the weekend. I was like, I've never done that. I think I'll just go do it. Have you ever done that? Oh, listen, you got to go at least once. These people are all about basically the foundation of what we're missing in our society, which is love, acceptance, and joy. It's almost like a hippie fest, but they serve you food because they're all about service to others, service of others and helping people. So they're going to create this whole temple based out of an old church in just south of Atlanta. They're talking about having gardens where they grow the food, and then you eat the food when you come to the temple, and that's what they serve. They're going to have a restaurant there. Their plans are just amazing. But the people themselves are amazing because they really are embracing the whole idea of love inside the body. Like Hare Krishna resides within the body, and it's basically the Christ consciousness that is missing from most people. So I felt it very endearing, to go there and to just immerse myself in what they were doing. It was like being in another country. And this one guy, he was only 23 years old, but he knew the Veda teaching in and out, sideways and back. Apparently, he had been studying it all his life. And it is profound knowledge, again, because when we get into the Vedas, they're the ones who have held this knowledge of knowing yourself fully. That's where Franz Barton had gotten all of his knowledge, was from the Vedic texts and things. And the Nazis, all these different cultures and occult groups who have been researching into the cosmology of the mind, they go into ancient India and the teachings there, because it's Sanskrit. That's where all these teachings come from. So, I was really excited to connect with these people, because I feel like I could just go there, and you can just go there. On Sundays, they have an open session where it's from 12 to 2, where they have, they lecture and they play music, and then you get to eat. And so they serve you food, and, it's about sharing. So I help them clean up. I cleaned up the bathroom and stuff, because they're like, please, if you can fight in yourself to just help us clean up when we're done with everything. And it was no problem. This is what community should be about, is about helping each other. And so I feel like that's where we should be going, and it's what we're missing. And that's why we're so chaotic out in the world, is because we're seeking solace in material things, and it's not bringing us real joy. It kind of satisfies an emotion for a moment, but then you find yourself being lost and empty, especially if you're out here, on an island. I'm kind of like in an island in my own world, because especially since this CV thing. Anyway, I've just been like, well, I'm just going to see what I can do to create my reality now.
You're doing a great job. And I love the optimism. And I showed this off one time before, but I want to show it off again. So this is your website. It's called wellnb.com.
Yeah, it's WellNB, yes.
And this is, so like if somebody wanted to book an appointment with you, the QHHT hypnosis and spiritual counseling, you can go ahead and do it right here. And I would definitely check it out, folks. So you put your information here, you submit. And then also I showed off your website for your artwork, and your artwork is amazing. But this is so cool. Thank you so much for being a guest. And I could talk to you for 3 more hours, but I have another podcast coming up here shortly. So can we do this again?
Yes, of course. You just let me know whenever you want to talk about stuff again, because there's just so much out here,
Yeah. Yeah. And is there anything else you want to share with us? Words of wisdom before we finish up this awesome show?
No, I just, hey, it's your saying, be the change you want to see, right? Because that's true. It's the most true thing.
It's everybody's saying, and everybody should do that. And I adapted it from Gandhi's saying. So yeah, you're awesome. I really had a great time talking with you, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if you want any of those links, just let me know, to
I do.
Marcel's work or anything like that. I can send them to you.
Please do. Please send me all the links, and I'll put those in the video description box. And folks, if you don't remember, just click the links in the video description box. It's that simple. Be the change you want to see.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.